Benefits of belonging. The time my community and workers of Jamaica is
Family Time 5:30 right here on the Sound of Love.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Family Time. We're on Facebook and YouTube Live. We're also on the Love 101 Facebook page and the YouTube channel. So welcome to everyone, wherever you're joining us from. Family Time is about your issues, your relationships, your at-home family, your community family, and your global family. Family Time is produced by Family Life Ministries, and our aim is to enable healthy families, which will lead to healthy nations. Stay with us, listening, and please join in. We want to hear from you. I'm your host, Halcyon Reid. Now, 18th century English poet Alexander Pope said, "To err is human, to forgive is divine." Why is forgiving divine? And exactly what does it mean to forgive? Bishop Dr. Damian Friend is our guest this evening, and he's here to help us understand more about forgiveness. Now, you probably think, yeah, you've got it, or you can do it, or maybe forgiveness isn't for you. Some actions are just not forgivable. But there are some truths about forgiveness that we hope will change your mind. Now, before we get there, though, here's what we want you to do. Tell us, what was the hardest thing for you that you ever had to forgive somebody for? What was the hardest thing you ever had to forgive somebody for? Now, WhatsApp your text or your voice notes, make sure they're no longer than 30 seconds, to 876-997-3125, or you may post on the Love 101 Facebook page or call the studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 8328 to participate. And throughout the program, we'll share what you share. Our topic today is the truth about forgiveness. We'll be right back.
Young G. Oh, you see my number? Well, duh. Nah, man, me just switch number to Flow. And got 30 days of unlimited data to do everything plus a free LTE SIM. 30 days unlimited everything? Yeah, man. Plus, there's more. After 30 days, I can activate any plan to continue enjoying unlimited YouTube, social, calls, and text to any network. You need all of that too. Yeah, you need to switch to Flow and keep your number. Visit your nearest Flow store today. Conditions apply.
You know the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. We Jamaicans have been practicing this for years, a long time, same thing. There's a family in need, a child in distress. You open your heart and home to love up the child as your own. Them glad bag bus and yours too, for years and years to come. Jamaican Christians, we need you to come in and fill up the village. Taking a child and raise him as your own. Taking a child and build up the nation. Ask Family Life Ministries about the For the Child Foster Care Program. Call 876-816-0889 today. This message is brought to you by Family Life Ministries in partnership with the Child Protection and Family Services Agency and Nairn Family Homes, Canada.
Every time you share a Coke, you can express what is hard for you to say. Open one and start now. Collect and share our bottles to ask for a kiss, to promote change, to show others how much respect you have for them, to spread smiles, to take a sip of Coca-Cola, to sigh, and to fill the world with fun. Express yourself letter by letter. Look out for our bottles with alphabet and share your wishes, feelings, and your joy with Coca-Cola. Open for better.
Life comes at you fast and it can hit hard. Apply for the Credit Union Prepaid MasterCard from C&WJ with chip and PIN protection. Need a card with a personal line of credit for emergencies? We have that. Need a card you can use to shop online for that must-have item? We have that. The community and workers of Jamaica Prepaid MasterCard. All the convenience of a MasterCard. Discover the benefits of belonging.
Theologian Dr. Russell Moore once wrote, What better way is there to bring the good news of Christ than to see his unwanted little brothers and sisters placed in families where they'll be raised in the nurture and admonition of the Lord? End of quote. I think this is why James 1:27 equates caring for the fatherless in distress as pure religion before God. If you're a Jamaican Christian, find out how you can live out the gospel by caring for a little brother or sister in need. Ask Family Life Ministries about the For the Child foster care program. Call 876-816-0889 today. This message is brought to you by Family Life Ministries in partnership with the Child Protection and Family Services Agency and Nairn Family Homes Canada.
Welcome back to Family Time on Love 101. Our topic today is the truth about forgiveness. And as my guest and I discuss, we want to hear from you. What was the hardest thing you ever had to forgive someone for? WhatsApp your text or voice notes no longer than 30 seconds to 876-997-3125. Or you may post on the Love 101 Facebook page or call the studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 8328 to participate. And throughout the program, we'll share your thoughts. With us this evening is Bishop Dr. Damien Friend. He currently serves as the Bishop of the New Ebenezer Tabernacle Apostolic Churches in Jamaica and Assistant Presiding Bishop of the International Council of Pentecostal Ministries headquartered in Raleigh, North Carolina. Bishop Friend has his undergraduate qualification in accounting, a master's degree in theology, and a PhD in counseling psychology with a specialization in Christian counseling. He's an internationally trained mediator and chaplain. Good evening, sir. Friend, how are you?
I am well, thank you. Good evening to you too, and to your listeners.
All right, so let's dive right in. What is forgiveness?
All right, forgive means to hurl away. It has to do with casting or throwing away that which has been done against us. It
Okay.
means to cancel a debt, so it's releasing the offender from the debt that they owe. It means to give up the resentment and the desire to punish. So it's a decision to no longer carry an offense on the books. So it really is a decision or choice to give up the right for vengeance, retribution, and negative thoughts towards an offender in order to be free from anger and resentment.
Okay. All right. So why is forgiveness divine according to the Pope?
Well, it is not our human nature to give up our right for vengeance and resentment. We usually smart from being hurt, from being offended. And the nature of mankind is to get back. But it takes God, it takes the influence of the Holy Spirit, it takes the move of God and the God-like quality and behavior to really forgive when you've been severely hurt. And so, another famous person said that, forgiveness is man's greatest need, but God's greatest achievement.
Okay. All right. So can you give us some examples from the Bible? What is this 70 times 7 all about? Why do we forgive?
All right. So let's start with the 70 times 7. The Jewish tradition was that you do not forgive someone more than 3 times.
Okay.
So the 4th time is a no-no.
Okay. Too many chances.
Yes. It's sort of like our thing, 3 times and you're out. 3 strikes and you're out. Yes?
Yeah.
Now, Peter in discourse with Jesus, and you know that Peter was the one of the 12 that, always spoke out, and
Yeah.
and so he was talking to Jesus, and he says to Jesus, how many times should I forgive my brother? Should I forgive him 7 times? Now, Peter felt that he was really being generous. Remember now, their tradition said 3. He more than doubled it. He said 7.
Right.
And I guess he believed that the Lord would have said, well done, Peter. But instead, Jesus says, no, 70 times 7, which of course would be 490.
Right.
Now, why does he say that? Well, apart from the spiritual significance of the number 7 and the issue of completion, and you'd be seeing 7 throughout that, 70 times 7, 7 number of completion, 10 number of ordinal perfection, times 7 completion. So, completely. And so it carries with it that picture of completely forgiving. But then there's also that teaching that we get in 1 Corinthians 13, which says that love does not bear record of evil. Now, if I'm not keeping a record of evil, how will I know that I have gotten to 490 times? So in other words, really, Jesus was simply saying, always forgive.
Forgive.
Yes, do not put it down to a specific number. Always forgive.
Okay. Wow. So for those of us who actually forgive, why do we forgive?
Well, first of all, there are different ways, different things we could look on, but the 2 main reasons that it makes sense to forgive is, first of all, we are ourselves sinners. We are human. We get it wrong. We hurt and offend sometimes, even when we did not intend to, even when it was not our expectation, but we get it wrong sometimes. And we therefore also need forgiveness.
Right.
And the scripture teaches us that we block our forgiveness from God if we do not forgive our neighbors, if we do not forgive those who offend us. Yes, as he taught us how to pray, forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Right? And so therefore, forgiving others accepts and acknowledges that we are also fallible and that we also need forgiveness, and it opens that door. The second thing is that it is best for our mental health. Unforgiveness affects us mentally. It affects our mental health, and we can speak about that a little later, but it affects our mental health. It affects our physical health. And so therefore, when we harbor resentment, then it destroys us. It is like eating poison and waiting on someone else to die.
Wow. Are there different types of forgiveness?
Not really, not in the real sense. There is forgiveness. You either have forgiven or you haven't forgiven. But sometimes, but forgiveness very often is a process.
Right.
So you might be at a different point in the stages of forgiveness.
Well, I'm sure some of us find it very, very hard to forgive, especially since you said we're supposed to forgive all the time based on what that story that Jesus was telling. But some of us, we still hold grudges and, we refuse to forgive. Why is that?
Because that's our nature. At the end of the day, if it is that we have been offended, then we feel as if we ought to get back at the person.
Right.
Of course, also a part of the issue is that there are some misconceptions about what forgiveness really is. Because sometimes we feel as if forgiveness means letting a person off the hook. Or forgiveness means that there will be no justice.
Right.
Or forgiveness requires, or forgiveness indicates that you are weak. And so because of the misconceptions about forgiveness, those also sometimes form a barrier. Those cause us not to be open to the idea of forgiving, because we feel that we're letting you off the hook, or it's going to lead to injustice, etc.
Yeah. Is it really possible for someone to forgive all the time?
It is possible.
Mhm.
It is possible. And when we have learned how to forgive, when we understand the principle of forgiving, and we begin practicing it, the more we practice forgiveness, then
Mhm.
the easier it actually becomes. But
Okay.
again, I will still underscore the fact that the influence of the Holy Spirit
Mhm.
is, of course, a major part of our ability to always forgive, especially
Mhm.
when it's an egregious wrong.
Mhm. All right. We're going to continue our conversation, but I just want to remind our listeners, join in our conversation. We're on our Love 101 Facebook page. You can write us a note there, or you can send us a text or a voice note to 876-997-3125, or you may call the studio lines 968-8327 or 28 to participate. We want to hear from you. All right, send us some message and ask your questions, or tell us what you think. Yes. All right. So tell us a little bit more, Dr. Friend, about the process. Is there a formula to forgive?
Yes, yes, there is. There are different schools of thought as to how to approach it,
Mm-hmm.
but I will quickly run through what is considered one of the more common processes. It's broken down into some 4 stages. All
Mm-hmm.
right, and it's called the forgiveness therapy process. The
Interesting.
first phase is uncovering your negative feelings about the offense. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, you'll never be able to truly forgive someone until you have come to terms with how you really feel about it. So denying that you're hurt, denying that you're offended, denying that you're angry, denying your negative feelings towards the issue, and sometimes even towards the person. Denying it will block you from being able to truly forgive. So the
Mm-hmm.
first stage is to stop and uncover your negative feelings.
Okay.
Recognize what it is you're feeling, how you're feeling, why you're feeling.
Right.
Then phase 2 is where you get to the point where you decide to forgive,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a conscious decision that you
Mm-hmm.
have to make, right? And you make it because of the pluses, because of the benefits, the advantages of forgiveness, which
Mm-hmm.
again, as I said, I'm sure we'll speak some more about, right? So you decide to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
You decide you're going to let go of the negative feelings. And then the third phase is where you work towards understanding the offending person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, that very often is one of the most difficult parts of the process. But it is the part that ensures that it is not just, we don't just say we are forgiven, but we really forgive in the real sense. It now gets to what we call positive psychology. And so you seek to understand the offending person, remembering that, of course, this person who did you wrong
Mm-hmm.
had reason or cause, whether justifiable or not. When we understand the offending party, it becomes easier to forgive them. There are very many times that we are so upset and angry and see others in such a negative light, when the reality is, if our circumstances had mirrored theirs, we
Mm-hmm.
probably would have behaved in the same way.
Same way. Right.
Yes, and so very often when we stop to seek to understand, put ourselves in the other person's shoe, then we find that it is not as hard to forgive them. It doesn't change the fact that we've been hurt or offended, but then we recognize that they are they are having issues themselves. They may have been, you know, the victims of certain negative things that have caused them to see things the way they see it, to behave the way they behave, to have made the mistakes they have made.
Mm-hmm.
And then, having understood, it now takes us to the last part where we are able to discover empathy,
Mm-hmm.
or compassion for the person.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so we are able to identify with, we are able to understand, we are able to appreciate where they are, even if it is that we are recognizing that they are a tortured soul. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it could be that they're a tortured soul why they behaved the way they behaved, why they
Right.
did what they did. But then it allows us to be able to release that, release the negative
Mm-hmm.
emotions
Mm-hmm.
and the negative energy and the resentment. And so those are considered to be the 4 phases of forgiveness.
Okay, so let's give that in just the 4 words. You said uncover first, right?
Yes, so uncover,
Uncover, decide.
decide,
Uh-huh.
understand,
Mm-hmm.
empathize.
Empathize. Okay. So at the end, I'll ask you to just remind our listeners, what those 4 steps are to forgiving. All
Sure.
right. Let me just read a couple of texts and then you can tell us the advantages and disadvantages of forgiving, because I'm sure many persons want to hear that. Why should I have to forgive him? I mean, he keeps doing this. Yeah. So
Okay.
Jacqueline from Clarendon says, good evening. Forgiveness is very, I think she meant to say hard, but when you ask God to help you to forgive the person, when you ask God for help, you forgive the person who wronged you and you do it. It's a heavy burden lift off you. It make you feel light. Yeah. So that's what Jacqueline is saying. And then another person is saying, I forgave an employee who tried to humiliate me at my business place as I was in the capacity to terminate her. Within 3 years in getting to know God, I realized I was carrying her in my heart with vexation. I forgave her after a spiritual encounter with God Almighty. When I finally contacted her indirectly, a burden was lifted from my shoulder. I tell you, awesome peace came over me. All right, so we have some more. Dion from Dublin Castle, or if that's how you pronounce that, says, finding it so hard to forgive because of, living in real, can't worship as before, felt upset most of the time. It's just not easy for me because of not forgiving, need some people not just to say what to do or how. I'm not sure if you understand that message, Dr. Friend. But
Uh,
basically, she's saying she's finding it hard to forgive. All right, I guess she wants to know the know-how. We kind of just went through the formula, so I guess at the end we can tell her again. All right, but tell us the advantages and disadvantages of forgiving. What are the benefits?
well, I heard it coming out in the messages that came here. One of the
Mm-hmm.
first and biggest is that forgiveness promotes healing and restoration of inner peace.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it allows you to get back your peace, and
Mm-hmm.
that is something that you cannot you cannot over emphasize. It is a significant blessing to have your peace. You know, some persons can relate, I'm sure, where it is that someone has done you wrong
Mm-hmm.
and you have them up, as we call it. Yes, you so there is resentment and hurt that you're carrying, and they have moved on.
Mm-hmm.
They are fine. In some cases, they didn't even know that they offended.
Right.
But you are the one who you're unable to sleep, you are
Mm-hmm.
miserable, you're uptight, there is tension. If you see them, you start having all kinds of attack, panic attack, anxiety attacks,
Mm-hmm.
you're tense, etc. And they're fine. At the
Right.
end of the day, one of the things I like to tell persons is that forgiveness is about you and not about others. It's not
Mm-hmm.
even about the person you forgive, it is for you. We've also found, it has been found by many research, many studies, that the act of forgiveness
Mm-hmm.
can reap huge rewards for your health. It lowers the risk of heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
It improves your cholesterol levels. It improves your quality of sleep. it reduces pain,
Mhm.
lowers blood pressure levels, lowers levels of anxiety, depression, and stress. Actually, persons who forgive have a better mental health, and they report to be more satisfied with life.
Right.
There, and what we've also found, research has shown that there's an increase in the forgiveness to health connection as you age, and,
Mm.
and that's significant. Yes,
Yeah.
people who hang on to grudges are more likely to experience severe depression, post-traumatic stress
Mm.
disorder, yes,
Mhm.
other stresses and chronic stress situations, sometimes what we call ASD, acute stress disorder, etc.
Mhm.
Usually also you find that persons who are unforgiving are prone to what we call toxic anger.
Mm.
And toxic anger will actually destroy your system. It releases chemicals in your system that
Mhm.
actually breaks down your system. Yes,
Mhm.
your muscles get destroyed. You become more anxious. You have lower energy levels. Your immune system gets destroyed. It was found, of course, that there is a much higher risk of heart disease for persons with chronic anger issues. And of course, there are poorer outcomes for those who already have heart
Right.
disease. And we could go on because there is a lot of research about it,
Mhm.
right? And if I just quickly remind us from the spiritual side, remember, if we fail to forgive, the Bible says that our prayers will be hindered.
Wow.
Our forgiveness is our forgiveness from God is hinged on our willingness to forgive those who offend us.
So if we hold a grudge, we don't forgive, then God won't hear our prayers. Is that what that is saying?
He will he says he will not forgive us.
Wow. Okay. Jacqueline is asking, can you forgive someone after they've died? What's your
Absolutely.
take on that?
Absolutely. Remember, as I said, forgiveness is really not about the other party. It's not about the offending party.
Right.
Forgiveness is for you.
Mhm.
Forgiveness is your decision to let go of the negative feelings, let go of the resentment, let go of the hurt,
Mhm.
right? And so you can forgive someone without ever even speaking to them about it. So you can forgive someone who have died. And I just want to remind us that forgiveness is not about forgetting. Some persons have taught that if you do not forget it, you haven't forgiven. That's not true, right? That's not how the brain works. But when you have forgiven, you do not remember it with feelings of pain and hurt and
Mhm.
anger and resentment.
Mhm.
Yes, it's important to remember too that because you have forgiven someone doesn't mean that you must reconcile with them.
Mhm.
Sometimes reconciliation is not safe.
Right.
Yes, forgiving an abuser doesn't mean that you put yourself back in the position to be abused.
Right.
And so these are some of the misconceptions that we have to recognize about forgiveness to
Mhm.
ensure that we are able to forgive, and at the same time we are not perpetuating the abuse or the negative situation.
Right. And it's a perfect time to answer this question from someone who sent a WhatsApp. They said, when someone hurt you and you try to forgive them and they still do the same thing, how does forgiveness come in?
Well, as Jesus said, keep forgiving. Important thing to note, because I've forgiven you doesn't mean there are no consequences for your actions.
Mhm.
And so if it is that consequences need to be there, then let them play out. At the end of the day, you may have to take some decisions, which may be decisions that are consequential to what they have done, or decisions to simply protect yourself. At
Mhm.
the end of the day, having forgiven you and you have shown it over and over again, I will keep forgiving you, but I may have to put some boundaries in place to
Mhm.
ensure that the same thing doesn't keep on happening.
Okay. All right, listeners, you've been listening or you may be watching Family Time on Love 101, produced by Family Life Ministries. Have you answered our questioners yet? We really want to know, what was the hardest thing you ever had to forgive somebody for? Tell us by WhatsApp text or voice notes, no longer than 30 seconds, to 876-997-3125, or you may post on our Facebook or Love 101 Facebook page, or call the studio lines 876-968-8327 or 28 to participate. Whatever you share, we will share. We're also Facebook and YouTube Live. We want to hear from you, so don't go away. We'll be right back. It's now 6 o'clock.
Many of our brothers and sisters lose hope when diagnosed with HIV. Some lose their will to continue being a part of society. Others are despaired by the challenges of keeping up with their treatment. We understand. But remember, people with HIV live normal and progressive lives every day. You can too if you get back on track with your HIV treatment. Live for you, live for someone, live for something.
Get back on track, get back to life.
A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Every time you share a Coke, you can express what is hard for you to say. Open one and start now. Collect and share our bottles to ask for a kiss, to promote change, to show others how much respect you have for them, to spread smiles, to take a sip of Coca-Cola, to sigh, and to fill the world with fun. Express yourself letter by letter. Look out for our bottles with the alphabet and share your wishes, feelings, and your joy with Coca-Cola. Open for better.
Wait, what you doing here? I come to start out a license. That little thing me I try start. But them no want help me. That no right. You talk to the manager? Yes, say I'm too busy. But as a money man walk in, them run to help him. Everybody have the right to fair and just treatment. That's how the Constitution go. Come, we're going on there. And this time I have to help you and treat you with respect.
Everybody have rights. Brought to you by the National Family Planning Board and the Office of the Public Defender.
You know the saying, it takes a village to raise a child? We Jamaicans have been practicing this for years, a long time sing. There's a family in need, a child in distress. You open your heart and home to love up the child as your own. Them glad bag bus and yours too, for years and years to come. Jamaican Christians, we need you to come in and fill up the village. Taking a child and raise him as your own. Taking a child and build up the nation. Ask Family Life Ministries about the For the Child Foster Care Program. Call 876-816-0889 today. This message is brought to you by Family Life Ministries in partnership with the Child Protection and Family Services Agency and Nairn Family Homes, Canada.
KSOJ's Crime Stop Jamaica Unsolved. Your help is needed to solve the double murder of Doreen Hamilton and her son, Arain Hamilton. They were murdered at about 12:55 a.m. on Saturday, September 2nd, 2017, at their home on Cedar Gardens Road in Mandeville. Both mother and son were shot multiple times in the torso and head and died on the spot. Crime Stop is offering a total reward of $250,000 for information leading to the arrest and charge of those responsible. Call Crime Stop Jamaica 311. Solving crime pays.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Family Time. You're tuned in to Love 101. Family Time is brought to you by Family Life Ministries. Family Life Ministries provides counseling for people with all kinds of challenges from all walks of life. Listen out for our numbers in Kingston and Portmore at the end of this program. And remember, we're Facebook and YouTube Live. So tune into the program via the Love 101 Facebook page and our YouTube channel. Bishop Dr. Damian Friend is our guest today. And he has an undergraduate qualification in accounting, a master's degree in theology, and a PhD in counseling psychology with a specialization in Christian counseling. And he's an internationally trained mediator and chaplain. Our topic today is the truth about forgiveness. And we're talking about how to forgive, why to forgive, and so on, and the formula to forgive. So let's continue with our conversation, Dr. Friend. When we don't forgive, when are some of the times we don't forgive people? And suppose we just can't forgive, or someone refuses to forgive me. Tell us your thoughts on those things. Are there any unforgivable acts or persons? Talk to us a little bit more about that, because I'm sure persons have those questions. They're thinking it sounds a lot much easier, to say than to do, actually, because sometimes people do some wrongs and it feels really, really hard. Yeah.
The reality is, forgiving is not easy.
Mhm.
So let's just get that out there. It can be quite challenging, especially if the hurt came from someone who you trusted in a very great way, to a great level, or it is that the person is unwilling to even acknowledge that they were wrong. It's one of the ways that one of the cases where you find many persons have a challenge in forgiving, because they think you should at least acknowledge that you're wrong. And there are so many times that we actually hinge our decision to forgive on the person acknowledging their wrong, their misdeed. Unfortunately, some persons will never accept that they're wrong. Some persons will not feel any guilt about what they have done. Does it mean that we continue to punish ourselves by harboring all of these negative emotions that are affecting our mental health and our physical health, and also keeping this unforgiveness, which affects our spiritual health? So at the end of the day, someone having hurt us and having not accepted that they were wrong, when we decide not to forgive, what we've done is to perpetuate the injustice that they have done to us. We carry it further. And so it really is not something that makes logical sense. But it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel that way, right? Because we feel as if really you should at least acknowledge. So some things are very hard. Some things, if done to some of our loved ones, we'll find that to be very difficult to forgive. But there's nothing that is impossible to forgive. But it is a matter of whether or not we're prepared to, we've decided to, and we're prepared to get help from God too. Now, when you find yourself stuck, yes, you're trying to forgive, but you feel stuck, there are a few things that you could do, and I'm going to make a few suggestions to you. Now, the first thing I'll suggest to you is to try to see the situation from the other person's point of view. And that takes some work, because you have to stop and get out of your emotions, or as they say today, get out of your feelings. Yes, you have to stop and try to, it's almost like an out-of-body experience. Try to put yourself from that other vantage point and see the situation from the other person's point of view. Ask yourself, why did he or she behave in the way that they behave? If you're able to understand that, then that sometimes will help to get you out of that rut, that area where you were stuck as it concerns forgiveness. Another thing you can do is to reflect on the times that you have hurt others. Reflect on the times that you have really done some wrong things. You have hurt and offended persons who mattered to you. Because unfortunately, we tend to hurt the people we love more than we hurt our enemies. Yes? And so think about that. Think about the cases where you were forgiven when you know that really you didn't deserve it, but you were forgiven. You may want to do some meditation, guided meditation. You may want to do some journaling for those who write. For those who do not write, you might need to find someone who you can talk to, someone who is wise, someone who is compassionate, someone who is not going to stoke the fire of the anger, but at the same time will be appreciative and understanding of where you are and your feelings of being stuck. and they will be impartial and seek to help you through that. Forgiveness is a process, and sometimes it's going to take a while. Sometimes you have to do it bit by bit, and sometimes you will have to deal with it you have to break it down in pieces to get it done, right? But if you feel stuck, these are some of the things that will help. Of course, when we speak about meditation, that includes the word and prayer. Yes, you would be amazed at how much this helps.
So that's some valuable information, on, how to process this whole forgiveness thing, Dr. Friend. But, Jacqueline is asking a very interesting question. Is it the same process when you want to forgive yourself? Do you go through the same stages, when you're the subject? She's talking about forgiving yourself. Tell us about that.
It's almost the same. What happens when it's yourself, though, is that you're now going to have to be prepared to audit your thought life, because it is now between you and yourself. So it means now, okay, when you try to understand why you did what you did, then that's going to require that, again, you get out of the emotions and try to assess the facts that you know about you. Sometimes you may need to get professional help. Sometimes you may need to get someone who is wise and compassionate and knows you, who will be able to help you to uncover what has been going on with you, right? And so that's the big difference when it comes to yourself, because now you have to start assessing your thoughts, assessing your thought life, which sometimes means you're going to have to stop and write. Just write what you're thinking, just write. And later on, you go back and look at it, because you would be amazed at how much noting your thoughts reveals to you when you look back at those thoughts. Because a lot of the thoughts we have are what we call automatic thoughts. So we didn't stop to really think it through, but we think it and we receive it and believe it.
Right. All right. We have two more comments or questions. Someone says, a member of the family is giving a lot of trouble, fighting hard to separate chosen members to herself. How do we deal with that?
All right. So I'll seek to address that within the context of the discussion.
Right.
And so I assume you're asking, do we forgive? Yes, forgive. However, remember what I said earlier. Even though you're forgiven, it doesn't mean that there shouldn't be consequences. It's like persons will commit a crime, and we assume that if you forgive them, then they shouldn't go to prison. Not necessarily. Yes, consequences follow your actions. So there may need to be some consequences that are put in place. There may need to be some boundaries that are put in place. But using this example, probably before we start talking about consequences and boundaries, probably there needs to be a discussion. What is the reason that this family member believes that it is necessary to pull others to him or herself? Is it an issue of self-esteem? Is it an issue that they feel as if they are an outcast, and so they are trying to get into that place of acceptance? And their way of getting into that place of acceptance is the divide and conquer, or the pull to my side. What is the reason? What is happening in that person's mind that causes them to believe that the only way to be comfortable in the family is to pull everybody from everyone else and to themselves? And I find that very often in life in general, because we do not stop to look into what are the likely causes of person's behavior, but simply we pass judgment on the behavior, that causes our issues as it concerns forgiveness, and it affects our relationships.
I hear you. But Bishop, what do you say to a person who was, sexually assaulted or, molested by a parent, a step parent? There's a listener who's saying, my stepfather molested me. What do you say to a person like that?
I say to that person that your pain is real, and it is pain that many persons cannot genuinely identify with. In my capacity as a psychologist, I unfortunately have to deal with that way too often, and it is a pain that leaves scars, and so it is going to be hard. You will very likely need help to be able to get beyond the negative impacts of that experience.
Mm-hmm.
You will likely need professional help, spiritual help, to be able to handle the residue of that pain and that hurt. However, forgiving the person who molested you is actually an important part of your healing. Now, I just keep underscoring, it doesn't mean that that person should not be punished. It doesn't mean that you need to be reconciled with that person because it might not be safe to do so. It doesn't mean that that person should be given a get out of jail free card. All right. It doesn't mean you shouldn't put boundaries in place to ensure that it doesn't happen again and it doesn't happen to anyone else. But it is necessary that you will be able to get to that place where you release the negative pain, the negative emotion, the pain, the resentment, the hurt, so that you can heal and so that you can move on with your life and have a good, healthy life in spite of that very evil deed that was done to you.
Thank you. Before we move to the next two voice notes, I just want to remind our listeners that, if you need any further help, counseling about anything at all, that molestation thing, or the person who said, they really need some help in, how to forgive because they're not able to worship, that sort of thing, Family Life Ministries can help you. We have counselors there, male, female, young, older. So the numbers are 876-926-8101 or 920-1034. Give us a call, make an appointment to see a counselor, and we'll help you through these issues. All right? So let's listen to our two voice notes.
Panel. The hardest thing was for me to forgive. For it's a junior minister. I did send a text, right? When I was going to a specific church, he did me something wrong, which it really, really did hurt every bone into me. But what happened is that I truly forgave him because one man I couldn't worship him. He sit right in front of me and I couldn't worship. And I called him out of church and go around the back and did say whatever was hurting me and tell him that I truly forgive him. And as of now, I don't hold any grudge against him. And it really happened. I felt so good afterward.
The hardest time, as I said, for forgiveness is 1989. I almost lost my father. My father went to sea, you see, and they had to build water. My father went to sea, you see, and they had to build water to save their life. And the next day, my daddy did not went to sea with the sea. So the men them lose their life. I'm from St. Elizabeth. Around 92 or 93, somewhere around there. Lady, she went to America and then came back. And somebody asked me to get them some water. So we could go over by the pipe and get some water. So that they need water to drink because the sun was hot and they was picking peanuts. I'm exactly from a farming area. And let me tell you something, I ball. Because it was so hurt the words that you speak and knowing that the men there that went to sea the next day has lost their life. It was hard. And I can tell you, it was the hardest time I've gone through forgiveness. I think it was easy but that one because I love my daddy so much. That is everything to me and more. If I want to say something about my father and I believe it's not right, then I'm going to fix. And that's how it is. My father, no matter how he is right now, I still do love my father. He's everything and more to me.
Yes, family time. Good afternoon. Yes, I hear the question and the truth about forgiveness. When you are unsaved, you treat it different because you don't really know God like that. So you become bitter and you would puffed up and you would have malice. But after you come to God and you learn about the word of God and the Holy Spirit that lives in you and you know your God with maturity because forgiveness comes with maturity. As you mature in the Lord, then you understand it more and you know that when you don't forgive a person, it make you heavy, it make you ugly, and everything about it is bad. However, it takes time, so I use it like a cut. I always use the example of a cut. Oh, if it pains, and then eventually it start to heal. So after healing take place, you will forgive. And if you're not able, I believe when you take it to the Lord, He will help you. You don't even know when you forgive the person. And the pain becomes so smooth and you even forget about it. Can hug and love the person. Yeah. So it takes time to heal. And it all depends on what you need to be healed from. But I believe we should forgive because it don't hurt the person. You don't forgive, it hurts you. Your heart heavy, your ugly, everything about it is wrong. So I hope all of us can reach the place that we can forgive.
All right. Thank you, listeners. Thank you for those comments. You have anything you want to say to that, Bishop?
Well, not really. I just want to agree,
Yeah.
that really forgiveness, as I've been saying, is about you. Yes, it's about your spiritual health, it's about your mental health, it's about your physical health. If I may, I'd like to just share 6 steps for granting forgiveness. 6 steps, and I'm not talking about the 4 phases that you want me to repeat
Right.
later, but just breaking it down even more so that we can probably try to work on them. So
And
step
when you're
1.
finished with that, when you're finished with those steps, Bishop Friend, I want us to tell the listeners what forgiveness is not, because I don't want us to confuse, okay, doing this, okay, that means, I'm
No
forgiven.
problem.
Yeah? All right, thank you.
Sure. All right. So step 1, acknowledge your pain and anger. Acknowledge your hurt. Allow yourself to feel disrespected if you were disrespected. Allow yourself to feel offended. Acknowledge it and allow yourself to feel it. Don't try to block it. Secondly, be specific about your future expectations and limits. Whether or not the person is someone that you will be continuing in relationship with, you still need to be specific about your future expectations and limits. If it is someone that you're continuing in a relationship with, whatever type of relationship, it's even more important that they understand what your expectations and limits are going forward. 3, give up your right to get even. Do not try to get even. And especially for couples, please remember this. You win together or lose together. If it is you're a couple, it cannot be that one wins and one loses. Yes? So do not try to get even. Give up your right to get even, but insist on being treated better in the future. So even though you're giving up your right to get even, you need to insist on being treated better in the future. Remember, we teach people how to treat us. 4, let go of the blame, the resentment, the negativity. Let go of it. Let it go. Let it go. 5, if it is someone that you are going to be remaining in relationship with, whatever type of relationship, then communicate your decision to forgive with that person. And finally, if it is a situation where it is safe to do so, then work towards reconciliation. As it concerns what forgiveness is not, forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is not condoning wrong. Forgiveness is not perpetuating injustice. Forgiveness is not letting a person off the hook, meaning allowing someone not to recognize that there are consequences for their actions. Forgiveness is not putting yourself back in harm's way knowingly. Forgiveness is not deciding that there is no need for justice. So forgiveness is not any of those things. Forgiveness is you deciding to be strong enough to give up your right to be even, give up your right for revenge, and choosing to let go of the negative emotions, the resentment, the hurt, the anger, which is destroying you, affecting your spiritual health, affecting your mental health, affecting your physical health. In other words, it is your decision to live again. It is your decision that you will not cause someone who has hurt you to continue hurting you by remote control. You have decided that they've hurt you and that hurt was enough. You will not perpetuate it. You're going to give up the feelings of anger, resentment, and pain so that you can live again. And don't worry. Remember, the Lord teaches us, whatever we sow, we reap. If we sow good, we reap good. If we sow evil, we reap evil. And remember, the harvest is always more than the seed. So karma, as we call it, it will come. But don't be caught up with that. You need to live on. You need to continue living. And that's the purpose of forgiveness.
Yeah. And I know someone has a question, but I think it's delving into another topic, asking how do you cope with the perpetrator living with you, knowing that you're at risk for repeated offenses? I don't know if there's anything you want to briefly say to that person, Bishop.
Well, in the interest of time, I'll just quickly say, find ways to get support to be out of that situation, out of that space. If the person is still there and you're at risk, then that needs to be fixed.
Definitely. And again, I just want to remind listeners that you can reach out to a counselor at Family Life Ministries for some guidance. talk to somebody if you need help today. All right. Thanks for being here with us. If you still have personal questions of your own, call us at Family Life Ministries. For our center in Portmore at 117 Cecile Avenue, the number is 876-939-7917. And for our other counselors across the island, you may call the head office at 876-920-1034 or 926-8101, and we'll connect you with someone. Remember, listeners, if you or someone you know would like counseling on dealing with any issue in family, relationships, or just everyday life, please contact a Family Life Ministries counselor today. Note that appointments can only be made by calling the offices. So to keep up to date with what's happening with FLM and our programs, find us on Facebook at FLM Family Life Ministries, on Instagram at FLMJA, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Family Life Ministries, FLMJA. Before we leave, we want you to remember this verse. The Lord our God is merciful and forgiving, even though we have rebelled against him. And that's from Daniel 9, verse 9. I'm Halcyon Reid. Join us again next week at 5:30 p.m. on Love 101 FM, Facebook, and YouTube Live via the Love 101 Facebook page and Love 101 YouTube channel for another informative program. Thanks again to our special guests, Bishop Dr. Damian Friend. Thanks also to our show producer, Kathy Gale, Open Door Communications, studio facilitator, Neeson Williams, and of course, you. Stay well, stay safe, and be blessed.
Theologian Dr. Russell Moore once wrote, "What better way is there to bring the good news of Christ than to see his unwanted little brothers and sisters placed in families where they'll be raised in the nurture and admonition of the Lord?" End of quote. I think this is why James 1:27 equates caring for the fatherless in distress as pure religion before God. If you're a Jamaican Christian, find out how you can live out the gospel by caring for a little brother or sister in need. Ask Family Life Ministries about the For the Child foster care program. Call 876-816-0889 today. This message is brought to you by Family Life Ministries in partnership with the Child Protection and Family Services Agency and Nairn Family Homes Canada.
You're listening to Family